1 week before Christmas, 1777, the 10,000 weary men of George Washington's army marched into the rolling hills of southeastern Pennsylvania to a place called Valley Forge. 1 in 3 was unfit for duty.
Men without clothes to cover their nakedness, without blankets to lay on, without shoes. Their marches might be traced by the blood from their feet marching through frost and snow. George Washington.
Cloth tents could not protect the men from the brutal winter, so they began to clear the forest to build huts. From Valley Forge, Washington could keep an eye on the British 21 miles away in Philadelphia. And a winter encampment in a remote place without distractions was exactly what the commander-in-chief needed. Washington meant to forge a real army this winter, disciplined and uniformed, men who would not retreat at the sight of a bayonet. He wanted an army like the English had.
One of the ironies of Washington was that he was rather pro-British, and he wasn't pro-British politically, obviously. He tried to model the Continental Army along the lines of a traditional European army. So he was a conventional 18th century thinker.
Harsh discipline was routine. At Valley Forge, a court-martial sat nearly every day. An officer caught stealing had his sword broken over his head in front of his company. Deserters received 100 lashes for the first offense, and the punishment would be drawn out for days. The men repeatedly ignored the rules of sanitation. Washington finally had to issue an order that any man caught relieving himself anywhere but at the latrines would be court-martialed.
Washington knew that he had to be tough. He had to call in the men who were willing to do the things they need to do to keep a 18th century army in line. And that even means executing men when you have to in order to make sure that they understand that the rules are the rules.
One of the factors about whippings, the floggings that were used as punishments in armies and navies of the 18th century is that you are inflicting a very, very painful surface wound that will leave a permanent scar so that people will know you had misbehaved, but that don't permanently disable the individual, because then he's no good as a sailor or a soldier.
Washington had only 3 months to mold an army before spring arrived and the fighting resumed.